Okay, ready to rock?
Hmm.
Ready to rock.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, we've got Lee and we've got Jeannie. Okay. This is a good group. And Adrian, we always have Adrian.
Hmm.
Hello, everyone. Happy
Hello.
solstice.
Hello,
Happy
SOTU.
solstice. All right. Look at us. We opened up his eyes and he's even here. All right. All right, what we really want to talk about is the dynamic of what's going on out there in the consensus and the reflections of that and the opportunities that you are faced with, and both on a personal level and on a greater level. There is no getting around the facts that the two of you, the three of you, for that matter, have what shall we say, taken a path less traveled. And in the dynamics, and that has been purposeful. That's that whole dynamic of why is your life different? Why are you different? Because you are intended to be what shall we say, a guide, a pillar, a speaker of truth, a speaker of, and we mean speaker of reality, a dynamic of, in the dynamics of your presence and your presence alone, others are affected in a way, not always a positive way, but certainly in a way that, what shall we say, adds to the dynamic and facilitates the dynamic of their growth as well as yours. All right, now we said all of that without taking a breath. So, but that's where the dynamic is right now. And then here we are on summer solstice, longest day of the year, which means that you're going to be losing. As a matter of fact, that things are going to be in so many ways clearer now today in this peak of light, because that's what you're talking about, the longest light of the day, the amount of
Hmm.
daylight. And so what you are realizing is that you are have the opportunity, each and every one of you, to see clearly what is coming to you. If you just allow yourself to relax today and take 5 or 10 minutes and just kind of look within and ask the universe, ask yourself, ask whatever deity or being or energy that you wish to engage, because it's all just one anyway, and you can call it whatever you want. But the dynamic ultimately is that here you are all observing this dynamic from a place that is not even your eyes, it's not even your ears, it's not even the dynamic of your senses, but the observer that exists behind your eyes. And that is the connection that you have to the divine. And so if you just allow yourself to go quiet for a little while, asking maybe what's next, asking not for things, but for a state of being, a state of peace. Now, you have a great task. Those in your world, those that are your children, those that are your relatives that are younger than you are the last of a foundational generation that knows a connection to reality that predates the technological advancement of the digital world that came about around the turn of the century. right? And you are remnants of a generation or a couple of generations, because Lee's not quite as old as the rest of you farts, all right? But still, there is that whole dynamic of knowing what it was like before. And Lee, you know what it's like before. It's just basically because of who who you were locked into back in those days. And even though they were difficult, they were still foundational in a very different way. As you all know, it was a very different world. And you have looked and you have watched, of course, with the hubbub and all of the chaos that exists in the world today, you're locked into the now. But being locked into the now means that you should not forget the past and all the lessons of the past,
Mhm.
because the dynamics of the past lead to that foundation of self, that sacred I am that most people don't have these days. They wonder who they are. So many people, you know, and here's the dynamic. It's the basic thing. Everybody's afraid of dying. Well, we want to tell you you've died hundreds of times. Some of you have died thousands of times. And you've done it in what would be viewed from this side as horrible conditions. And the great fear is that, oh, I'm going to die in great pain. But no, it's really, if you're going to leave, it goes just like that. If you were going to jump out of an airplane or jump off a building, those people that jumped off the building in 9/11, they were dead before they hit the ground. They had already, their souls had already left their body. Your soul is not going to allow you to suffer in that sort of way. So some of the greatest fears that exist are around the ways that others have controlled you in the past has been to exacerbate the fear. And the basic way that the fear has been exacerbated has been through the belief that there's not enough and you're not enough, and you all have to compete with each other in order to survive in this world. And that is the basic lie that there has been. But if you consider that you are a species that has gotten wiped out about every 15 or 20,000 years, in the dynamics of the way history has gone, you will realize why humanity seems to be so violent and so competitive in that sort of way, because as a species, as a consciousness, you have had to survive through the dynamic of one cataclysm after another and after another. And we believe this is, you're facing a dynamic of what they are calling the sixth reset, right? And the thing about it is that with each succeeding dynamic, with each succeeding civilizations, and science is catching up with us now, by the way. If you read some of the Sumerian stuff that is coming to the fore now, and some of the archaeological stuff, especially in Egypt, in Sumeria, in Turkey, in those whole areas, there's so much more information that's coming through right now about the dynamic of how many species there were, or how many conscious species there were on the planet, and what the civilizations were like, and all of that. And all of that is really doing, that's answering the questions of who you are, because so many of you have been asking that question over the decades. Who am I? And who am I going to be? So if you look at the dynamic and you realize that all of the competitive nature, all of the warlike nature of humanity basically comes because you are survivor species. And so now, after all of these cycles, you are facing the end of another cycle, but the beginning of one, an opportunity that those of you that are foundationally minded are able to, with objectivity and discernment, look at the dynamics of your world. And, we have given you any number of ways that you can begin to move in order to begin to shift the dynamics of your world. But primarily, the one thing is getting the mental, emotional concept into your minds, into your hearts, that true compassion means a basis of survival for everyone. And you have the technology available to do this. Now, if you have been following us at all recently, you will know that Adrienne, and we'll give her credit for this, has been working with AI in such a way as to say, you said to AI, how do we provide food, water, and shelter to 8.2 billion people on the world, in the world? 8.2 billion people. Food, water, shelter for everyone. Why? Well, if everyone had their needs met as far as food, water, and shelter goes, there probably wouldn't be any more war. Why fight? Send everybody back to their home country. 40 acres and a mule. And, well, but you begin to see the dynamics of the possibility. Who would you be if you didn't have to work? Who would you be if you didn't have to survive? Who would you be? What are the possibilities? Go ahead, Adrienne. Adrienne, because she talked to AI about this, so we'll let her take this piece.
Well, the AI said that there's clearly enough. What's missing is the will. But basically, the idea was put forth, I believe it originally from Ezekiel or SOTU,
Back in his
or
day,
Josh, that by simply putting a small levy on every financial transaction
a
that happens,
financial transactions fee.
a fee, a levy, every big financial transactions, small financial transactions, every day in order to cover the food, water, and shelter.
For 8.2 billion people.
That levy
It's got to
need
be a huge amount of money, right?
that
It's got to be
levy
huge.
that fee comes out to 0.0024 cents
A day.
on each dollar of transaction. Less than a quarter of a penny on each dollar that is transacted would provide food, water, and shelter of a high level, not just minimalist, for everyone. Less than a quarter of
Now,
a cent.
the dynamic ultimately is you're beginning to see, because again, you older farts, you tend to have a perspective on the dynamics of time. And so if you can look at it, both of you have been listening to us rattle off for years now. So the dynamic is there's nothing that we're telling you that you really haven't heard before. We're just putting it together in such a way because this is the time. This is a very opportune time to begin to just step forward in your own way as the opportunities present themselves. Because the opportunities, as you well know, will present themselves. All right. So as you move forward in this sort of way, and don't think that the challenges will be too great. They will not. Just trust yourself and trust that your gut instinct will be, correct. Don't worry about being perfect. Don't worry about, anything like that. And allow yourself, if you can just allow yourself to be truly authentic in who you are, you will be shining a light of energy out into your world that very few people are shining these days because everyone is so concerned about this and so concerned about that. And yet all of those concerns are mostly distractions. Because the truth of the matter is, how is humanity going to come? We can explain it to you. We can say every 15 to 20,000 years, there's been a cataclysm that has wiped out whatever advanced civilization existed on the planet at that time. And so humanity had to start from scratch again. And so, is that the opportunity that's faced with you now as your world as is becomes more and more polarized, as the divisions become more and more apparent, not less apparent? How many people are mentioning the word unity on any given day? So it's a radical idea to think about coming together in a time of division. And we've been teaching you for years how to do that, how to move to a third physician, how to take the viewpoint of others and honor them, even if they are wrong. Well, at a certain point, is it going to take the old Ronald Reagan thing of the aliens having to come down in order to unite humanity and have an interstellar war? And would that even do it at this point? That's a real question. So,
Doesn't
Adrian,
doesn't that end up just being a different us and them?
yes, just a different us and
Yeah.
them. So, we say it's a very simplistic thing to say food, water, and shelter. But you add healthcare and education to that dynamic, and you have everybody having the opportunity to have an equal start. Now, we're not talking about communism, and we're not even talking about socialism. The left, the Democrats, would be smart if they understood this dynamic and they realized that, here's Mamdani up in New York and he's wanting to do free health care and he's wanting to do free bus rides and he's wanting to do all of these things that are there's many more of them coming up. But it's the tendency because the division between the haves and the have-nots are great. And yet, the have-nots in America are so much better off than the have-nots in the rest of the world. So it's a very interesting dynamic if you look at it that way. Go ahead.
Well, the old template of is take from the rich, or this person doesn't have enough, that person has too much. Instead of considering this idea of a fee on every financial transaction, no one would feel that.
Right. No, and the dynamic ultimately but it's also that mindset. It's that mindset of caring and compassion, except not competition, not comparison. That whole dynamic of unity rather than division. To be able to see, how many times have we said, you are all divine beings manifested in physical body? We didn't say some of you, we said all of you. Anything that has life on your planet. Well, does that mean minerals too? So too? Yes, it does in a way. It's just much slower than your life. So, Adrian, you have a question?
No.
All right. All right. So, the if you have one task that you could do in your life, it would be to be able to get someone to imagine what their life would be like if they if they were born into a world where they didn't have to worry about survival, food, water, and shelter, where any type of education or art or creation that you wish to take care of and you wish to do, you could pursue. If there was something that interests you, or even nothing, but that is beginning to emerge already, those ideas into your world. Now they're calling them socialistic and one-sided, but again, it throws up a dynamic of division, and yet it's anything but. It's a dynamic of compassion for all the other divine beings manifested in physical bodies. There would be no more war. There wouldn't be mass immigration. There would be the ability to develop cultures that are and belief systems that are far in advance of the very primitive ones you, what shall we say, believe in now. So we just want to tell you that that's possible. If in your own small way, if you can begin to do that just with the people that you know and the people that you love, you will be amazed at how that energy, that resonance will seem to catch on because it is truly the natural way to live. Right. Well, that's our soliloquy. Again, it's all up to you. It's in the dynamics of even with the small group of believers, you can change the world. You can at least change your own world. All right. So let's not talk about any politics or anything like that because they're all assholes. And they all have their heads so far up their asses that but you see they're playing out the script. Now you can go ahead and you can blame it on the archons, you can blame it on the demiurge, you can blame it on women. That's where we're no, or you can blame it on men. Or you can realize that if you take responsibility for it and you say, hey, how do I solve this problem? How do I make it so that there's no more gangs? Well, you give the kids nothing to compete about. Everybody has the ability to have everything. Everything about you teaching youth and all of that, it's all competition, isn't it? There's hardly anything in your world about cooperation. If you watch the news, they give you about 3 minutes of positive things a day, if you get that much. So, if we were to say one thing to not do not give in to the fear. Because we would say to you primarily, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's nothing to be afraid of. You keep that foundation of self, your soul, especially at this point in your lives, doesn't really wish to sabotage you unless there's something terrible that you have been kept locked up for so many years that you're not going to be able, then that's none of you because we've kicked that closet for all of you in that sort of way years ago. All right. Now, that's not to say that you still don't have vestiges. You're not perfect, but prepare yourself that more and more you're going to be reading other people's thoughts, and they're going to be reading yours. That's part of the change. That's part of the upgrade. And if you haven't seen it already, you will soon. All right.